We light our chalice this week with the words of the Reverend Alice and Chalica Nasaman, who serves our congregation in Marlborough. In a time of uncertainty, when everything around us is changing constantly, each day new developments, rising numbers, changing guidelines, when the world we live in suddenly seems upside down and topsy-turvy, we light our chalice to remind ourselves of our grounding in our faith. We remember that the flaming chalice came into being as a beacon of hope during World War II, a secret symbol that offered hope. In the midst of it all, we wrap ourselves in the warm light of a familiar flame, a reminder of the strength that emerges when we come together as a community. In this, our seventh and final week of Chalica, completing our observation, we celebrate the seventh principle, which is respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we're a part. Or stated differently, it's that we believe in caring for our planet Earth, the home we share with all living things. We used to come together around this table when we met in person to share our joys and concerns, the things that were beautiful in our lives and the things that brought us sorrow. I share these pebbles today symbolically for all of us, because I know there are joys in people's lives that need to be celebrated. There are birthdays, maybe births, anniversaries, and just plain old good days that deserve to be celebrated. I know that there are difficult times for people. People tired of this pandemic, tired of the isolation, frightened by the events in our nation's capital, and just having a hard time. I place this last pebble into our bowl with a hope that you'll remember you are not alone, that if you reach out, someone surely will be there to celebrate with or to help comfort you, whether you're celebrating a joy or contending with a sorrow today.
Please join us in our Unison Reading. The task that remains is to cope with our interdependence, to see ourselves reflected in every other human being, and to respect and honor our differences.
The other day, not least because it was so cold outside, and because I am so bored inside, I found myself making one of these, just to pass the time, just a little moment of artsy crafty moment in the middle of my workday. I've actually always loved making snowflakes like these, and snowflakes in general. They really are like an extraordinary part of nature. You know, a snowflake can be as small as the diameter of a strand of hair, or possibly as large as a penny. Sort of like this, they are just gorgeously intricate. It's like almost like a piece of lace made of crystals. In fact, most snowflakes have no less than 200 individual ice crystals making up all their parts. You know, even though 100 billion snowflakes fall on the earth every single day, at least half the global population has actually never seen snow before. And that's kind of remarkable because that's actually who I was for many, many years. A person who had never seen snow. Except for sort of on television or in movies and pictures. You know, growing up in southern Florida, snow was like almost like a myth. It was like a story from like something from Hans Christian Andersen or something. The idea that there's this kind of like solid precipitation that like landed and stuck around the way that, you know, was icy and blanketing and coated the ground. You know, it seemed impossible that something so cold could last. When I got older, I was mesmerized when I began to see, as some photographers and artists have done, photographing snowflakes in impossibly high detail. Some of these images that you can see of snowflakes, they showed that whether you're looking at them from very far away or from extremely close up, you could never totally understand just how intricately shaped they are. I'm still baffled by these photos. Because snowflakes are never really alone. They always group together in order for their substance to become truly visible. Because snow is not only a tiny, delicate miracle when we see a flake with all of its webbing dimensions. Snow is also like a chilly white comforter that gets pulled over the landscape in the very late fall, and just absolutely reshapes our world. So having spent some time with a little bit of paper and thinking about these crystalline webs that are, of course, absolutely filling the out of doors, I was thinking about this as a lesson about our interdependent web, and something that snow can teach us about it. Especially here in this particularly cold and snowy January, when I read that seventh principle, the idea that always comes through is the idea of connection, sort of the idea of like all the points that are brought together through the web of this particular piece of paper. After all, that's what webs are all about, right? They are there to connect dots and points to other points. So in the context of the interdependent web of all things, we're people, are points connected to other people, to animals, to other things that fill the universe. And that is a fine and beautiful model. It looks exactly like this, a web connecting these different things together. Except the thing is that we aren't points. We aren't individual marks in space. Each of us individually, we are webs of experiences and instincts and thoughts and feelings unto ourselves. We are interdependent webs of our own. And that means that the interdependent web of the universe of things is actually made out of even more interdependent webs of us as individuals. And these webs, they overlap and intersect in complex and unpredictable waves. They weave together what becomes a blanket that is thick and deep, just as a snowfall is when it reshapes the landscape around us. So that all of the shapes and differences and all of those little peculiarities become shrouded by like a snowy sameness. And to me, I think this is really profound, because if so many of the principles are about preventing us from seeing other people as different from us, if so many of the principles are about making sure that we see one another in our full dignity, and imagine ourselves in a community of fair exchange and meaningful and truthful in a relationship, then seeing ourselves as webs that connect in this way is one of our best tools for ensuring that whatever the world looks like, that we always have in mind something that blankets and connects us, and that the dignity, the justice, the truth, the community, all of those things that link us together, they always see them contributing to the same interdependent thing of which we are all a part.
Yes, there is panic buying. Yes, there is sickness. Yes, there is even death. But they say that in Wuhan, after so many years of noise, you can hear the birds again. They say that after just a few weeks of quiet, the sky is no longer thick with fumes, but blue and gray and clear. They say that in the streets of Assisi, people are singing to each other across the empty squares, keeping their windows open so that those who are alone may hear the sounds of family around them. They say that a hotel in the west of Ireland is offering free meals and delivery to the housebound. Today, a young woman I know is busy spreading flyers with her number through the neighborhood so that elders may have someone to call on. Today, churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples are preparing to welcome and shelter the homeless, the sick, the weary. All over the world, people are slowing down and reflecting. All over the world, people are looking at their neighbors in a new way. All over the world, people are waking up to a new reality, to how big we really are, to how little control we really have, to what really matters, to love. So we pray and we remember that yes, there is fear, but there does not have to be hate. Yes, there is isolation, but there does not have to be loneliness. Yes, there is panic buying, but there does not have to be meanness. Yes, there is sickness, but there does not have to be disease of the soul. Yes, there is even death, but there can always be a rebirth of love. Wake to the choices you make as to how to live now. Today, breathe. Listen. Behind the factory noises of your panic, the birds are singing again. The sky is clearing. Spring is coming, and we are always encompassed by love. Open the windows of your soul, and though you may not be able to touch across the empty square, sing.
Join us in our unison reading. Resolve to be tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, and tolerant of the weak and the wrong. Sometime in life you will have been all of these.
Each week we come together as a people. Together we share stories, love, aspiration. We also share our bounty in ways that express our religious UU values. May this important ritual of sharing abundance remind us that making our world better is a task best shared.
Good morning. In his essay, Health is Membership, Kentucky essayist, farmer, and philosopher Wendell Berry suggests that individual health cannot ever be divorced from one's larger membership with the earth and its various communities. Health, Berry suggests, requires remembering, resisting a culture that isolates us and parcels us out. But how does this apply to our current moment, in which we are all, in fact, physically isolated and segregated from each other? How do we begin to deal with the spiritual, physical, emotional, and communal devastation caused by the COVID-19 virus? What ought we to remind ourselves of, and what ought we to remember in a more communal sense going forward? Berry wrote Health is Membership approximately 26 years ago, but its prescriptions and condemnations are well suited to our own complex, troubling moment. Health means literally to be whole, but this wholeness cannot and should not be attributed to individuals in isolation. Health as wholeness must have larger implications. Not just the sense of completeness in ourselves, Berry argues, but also the sense of belonging to others and to our place. Full health rejects the division and disintegration of culture, community, and ecology. It rejects the separation of family from family, as well as the specialized view of the self that severs body from soul, or even parts of our body from other parts. Yet we often like to see the various parts of our world as separate entities: churches, nuclear families, schools, grocery stores, office buildings, hospitals, assisted living centers and nursing homes, apartments and townhouses, all subsist in detached zones. Beyond all this, there are the shared parks and forests, rivers and streams, roads and gardens, which we see as lovely and important, but rarely view as ours. We approach our world like a machine, divorcing ourselves from every other part, pulling apart the various strands in the tapestry. Most approve of this segregation, thinking how well we have streamlined society. But we cannot reclaim health without considering practices that hurt those beyond and around and underneath us in the soil, the water, the air, the neighbor's house, and beyond. Modern thinking on health excludes unhealthy cigarettes, but does not exclude unhealthy food, water, and air, Berry writes. One may presumably be healthy in a disintegrated family or community, or in a destroyed or poisoned ecosystem, but reality, of course, is far more nuanced and interconnected than this definition allows. My own health can't be separated from yours. Neither can it be separated from the health of the planet. John Vidal wrote in Scientific American, "A number of researchers today think that it is actually humanity's destruction of biodiversity that creates the conditions for new viruses and diseases like COVID-19 to arise, with profound health and economic impacts in rich and poor countries alike. In fact, a new discipline, planetary health, is emerging that focuses on the increasingly visible connections among the well-being of humans, other living things, and the entire ecosystems." But just as the pandemic has revealed how interconnected we all are, It has also exposed the extent to which we have disintegrated and dismembered our society. We're all members, but too few people know it. Our world is interconnected and interdependent, much like a body, as Barry describes in his essay, The Body and the Earth. Body, soul, or mind or spirit, community, and world are all susceptible to each other's influence, and they are all conductors of each other's influence, he says. This is a network, a spherical network, by which each part is connected to every other part. Indeed, Barry suggests that we could compare our world to a circulatory system. Disease in such a system tends first to impair circulation and then to stop it altogether. It's interesting here to think of COVID-19 in the often strange, unpredictable, full-body impact it can have on those who suffer from it, from one's toes to one's lungs. Symptoms have been sporadic, severe, and unpredictable. The frustrations it has posed to our healthcare system are likely increased by the fact that our system is extremely specialized and likes to view the body as a machine with disparate parts, rather than as a whole in which all affects all. It is not just because we share a fallen, broken reality. It is also because the health of each piece of this world affects every other piece. To lack empathy, care, or love for the destruction of one part of our world is both selfish and unself-conscious. It reveals that we believe we are somehow separate from the fate of our fellow creatures or of our shared earth. It's important to note that the decimation of our economy through the last several months is indeed a problem and indicative of the fact that every piece of our world is deeply connected. But the fragility of our economic system should not call on us to ignore the needs of the sick, to further sever or reduce our definition of wholeness or prosperity. The parts are healthy insofar as they are joined harmoniously as the whole, Barry writes. Putting economics before community, before health, is not the answer, even while ignoring economic unhealth as fragility is not the answer. Healing complicates the system by opening and restoring connections among the various parts, in this way restoring the ultimate simplicity of their union. Our struggles with the COVID-19 virus are far from over, but our attempts to find healing in days to come will not be limited to the vaccine. They must be deeper, wider, taking into account all the multitudinous severances which suggest that our world needs wholeness and love. The virus has revealed the fragility of our food system, the way efficiency has broken down health and resiliency. We've seen how broken our nursing homes and elder care systems really are, evidenced in a horrific amount of deaths. The spread of virus in prisons should show us, once again, how urgently we need prison reform. And the very existence of the COVID-19 virus shows us that the diversity and health of our ecosystems need to become more important than the temporary beneficence created by logging, mining, and other systems that deteriorate or destroy the earth. But just as important, perhaps, will be individual acts of quiet fidelity on behalf of the voiceless or vulnerable. Perhaps even as larger reforms appear daunting or distant, there are efforts each of us might make to heal and restore broken connections. Even in this dark and difficult time, such healing is taking place. Within our hospitals, it's evidenced in the nurse who faithfully holds the hand of a dying patient until his last breath. It's displayed in the priest who died after giving his ventilator to another sick individual. It's visible in neighbors who regularly offer free food or diapers to those in need, local townspeople who are donating to food pantries, and churchgoers who are providing food to needy families or to the sick. It's evidenced in the abundant growth of victory gardens, the letters sent to nursing home residents, and the widespread surge in community-supported agricultural support. None of these things by themselves represent a perfect return to health. None of them can fully fix problems of systemic injustice, which lead to larger trends of ill health in our country. But they are a beginning. They reflect a realization that we are indeed part of a membership, and that our health is therefore predicated on more than our own physical resilience. To be healthy, we must acknowledge and love the entire web of life we are part of.
For the last 7 weeks, we have been paying especially close attention to the 7 principles that are part of the covenant between the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We have lit candles each week in a special arch, and I have spoken the words of each principle in both their legal and kid form. We have lifted up the themes of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion, acceptance of each other, and growth in our spiritual journeys, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the use of the democratic process, the goal of rolled community, and today we're going to look at the respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we, of course, are a part. Having done all this, focusing each week on world events and conversation with these principles, I feel a little awkward to have to make a confession this morning. From about 2012 to 2020, I regularly played a strategy game on my phone and iPad. In 2012, the scenario seemed to be so ridiculous that I never imagined a world in which I'd have to stop playing the strategy game because it became upsetting. Since 2012, really until about a year ago, I played a game called Plague Inc. The goal of Plague Inc. is to create and evolve a virus that essentially wipes out humanity. It wasn't my desire to wipe out humanity, of course. It was a game to try to beat the odds, a game of strategy to take over more and more land, sort of like the old game of Risk, but that game is a lot less fun on a cell phone than it is on a board. I have to say I wasn't very successful at the game. My virus was defeated by science and medicine far more often than it won, but that was part of the fun of it. But after last year, after we started hearing about this strange, new, highly contagious virus coming out of, it seemed, a western province in China, in a place called Wuhan, I stopped being able to play the game. Not because I believed that the virus was created, as the virus in my game is created, but that the spread of the virus seemed to follow a kind of similar path as the spread of my virus in my game. Of course, that's really where the similarities ended. The pattern and rapidity of the transmission of the virus. The game had become too close to being a real-life news story to be just a game any longer. We had people in our own congregation who were early spreaders of good scientific information, and to them I am grateful. I would like to especially mention Kevin, whose Facebook posts were full of information about preparedness and prevention without ever once sliding into panic. For me, and I'm sure others, Kevin's posts and sharing help take some of the fear out of COVID-19, while at the same time reminding us, pleading with us, to use proper caution and to take care of ourselves and those that we love. As I put my video game aside and I watched over a long year, along with the rest of the world, a real-life virus sweep the planet to which, in real time, our scientists and medical professionals battle this very real threat, an awareness dawned on me. This virus, this COVID-19, this novel coronavirus, has just demonstrated how truly interdependent we are as living beings on this planet. COVID-19 does not respect political borders. It will not pay attention to the income or education a person has. It will not give preference to one political party or one religious understanding. It does not, in fact, have a will at all. In seminary, we were taught that grief is a great equalizer, that all will suffer grief. All will process grief differently, of course, but grief comes to us all. COVID-19 is an equalizer in a kind of similar manner, although, truth be told, a more frightening manner. Grief, we know, is painful. Grief is the result of having loved a person as a partner in life or a dear friend. You had a pet you took care of and loved. It may seem like a high price to pay when one is in the deepest throes of grief, but grief is the evidence that love was there. COVID-19 is not the residual effect of love. And while grief, we know, is survivable, COVID-19 has very real health consequences. Consequences we don't yet even know because there hasn't been enough time for people to experience long-term effects for us to record the data. And perhaps most cruel of all, COVID-19 keeps us from gathering, as we have evolved to do as modern humans in times of grief and celebration, robbing us of chances to come together with a friend and loved one outside of our germ pod, hiding smiles of strangers under masks, isolating us when we've evolved to be social beings. Particularly in times of great stress, our very human reaction is to come together, to share resources, to hug one another. That is perhaps the cruelest part of COVID-19. It is spread by social contact with each other. It seems almost as Mavian in a way, our greatest strength turned against us. It is the stuff of science fiction or dystopian fiction, and yet it has become our reality. What Asimov and other writers of speculative fiction do with their work is try to get us to see the world, our reality, in a clearer way with the use of metaphor. Octavia Butler was a master examining the roles of sexism, racism, and classism in her body of work, for example. Speculative fiction, though, is safe because it's words on a page or a screen. I guess in a similar way, the video game I had to give up was safe because it was, after all, a speculative fiction. What this pandemic has taught us is that we are very interdependent on each other in ways that may make us uncomfortable. The reality, not the fiction, is showing us that we are connected to each other, each living being on this planet, in ways that we cannot control. We cannot simply use a bookmark to temporarily close the story. This, if you'll pardon the creation of a new phrase, is non-speculative reality. This is what we're living in. The world has laid bare for us truths in a way that has made us really have to re-examine the way that we exist. We have a common problem, a virus. It's too small to contain, it's too new to cure, it's too pervasive to ignore. To do any of those things would be at our own peril. Thing is, we're not living in a new reality. We are seeing the world more clearly than ever before. We have come to realize that those that have been dubbed essential workers are those who not only hold advanced degrees, but are the people who empty the trash in retirement homes, the people who work in drive-thrus at fast food and coffee shops, and of course the people who work in the grocery stores. They have been asked to continue to show up for work, to put themselves at risk, and our system is still not willing to see their labor as equally important to the so-called professionals. Working for social justice on behalf of those who hold the mops in our hospitals is not something we do at arm's length. It is not just a good idea. Rather, our work as a people of faith on behalf of our fellow human beings is not only rooted in the survival of those that we might have think of as less fortunate, but for our own survival as well. There is no other. There is only us. And though it has been and continues to be a hard lesson to learn, and there have been great costs, such as a loss of 2.4 million human beings in the last year from this virus, we cannot bring back the people who have died. We can honor those who have been sick, those who will be sick, and those who have worked tirelessly to prevent further sicknesses. If we use this extraordinary moment in time, our lives in conjunction with this terrible pandemic, and bring forward to ourselves and the rest of humanity a new understanding of just how interconnected we all truly are, even the beings we cannot see. As we prepare to leave our time together, we will be singing together a favorite hymn called Blue Boat Home, which reminds us that we are, in fact, the ship companions one to another, that we're in this boat together, that we have to take care of each other, and we can look forward to being together on life's rough seas and calm, beautiful vistas.